Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men in the House podcast. And on today's episode, we have Shane Jacob, and we are going to talk a little bit about confidence, conquering fear, and just navigating the chaos of everyday life as we do over here at the Men of the House podcast. So, how's it going today, Shane?
Hey, Richard, I appreciate your show. Appreciate you having me with you here today. Appreciate the opportunity. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on this morning. I'm excited always to talk about life and what leads us to our journeys, and how we end up in front of each other and what those catalysts are, and of course, any unexpected benefits, because I definitely like to encourage people to chase that dream, take that step, whatever it is, into that uncomfortable ability, um, because I think there's magic stuff on the other side of that, even though we can't see it. But give us a little bit about your background and how you got into this space where you like to talk about conquering fear and confidence, and what led up to that, and what was the catalyst of deciding to get in this space.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting life, and the things that you look back and the decision points that end up bringing us together where we're at. It helps you. I think it helps us realize the power of the decisions that we make on a daily basis. I mean, I like to become aware of that. So super great to your point. That really struck me there, struck a chord. But anyway, yeah, I appreciate that. So my story, the thing of it is whatever reason, Richard, when I was a young man, and what I mean by that is like in my teens and into my early 20s, for whatever reason, I really thought the rest of the world was different than me. I was less than, I thought, well, everybody else is this, and I was super shy, and I was really trying to fit in. I did pretty good at sports. I was in football and I wrestled, and pretty successful. I mean, I thought I did pretty good at that, and really trying to fit in. But all the time there's a tape playing in the back of my mind, like something's wrong and you're not enough and those people are better. And it's just subconsciously playing. And in retrospect, I look back and I can't pin it on anybody or any event. I didn't have specific trauma. In my opinion, even on this day, when I look back at my childhood, I thought it was pretty good. So where this came from, I don't know. I think it's kind of a lesson that we just all have to learn, and maybe some, our experiences and maybe even our genetics play into it. But for whatever reason, uh, nobody told me that I had to kind of learn how to have confidence and learn about this relationship with myself. And it didn't feel good. What was happening didn't feel good, and it wasn't changing. So when I was, I don't know, mid-teens, however old I was, I experienced alcohol and I found my solution. I
Oh,
mean,
with the
problem
confidence.
solved. You with me? I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, that was the answer. So I was happy that I found that, and I felt better. I fit in. My inhibitions are gone. And I mean, things are really starting to roll now, more comfortable with other people and girls, and really more comfortable inside myself for those moments,
Right.
right?
Always.
So, you know, as a result of this gain or this plus or this win or this success or whatever, I don't know if I wouldn't really call it a success, but the solution that I found, as a result of the solution I found, you know, I ended up in jail. I damaged and uh, irreparably hurt people. Um, Yeah, and so then I was locked up, and I mean that this further fueled my idea that of my inadequacy inside of myself as all this is happening. Got out of jail, still same things happening, and so I turned to alcohol again. I turned to alcohol for a solid 20 plus years on a daily basis. I mean, to excess, not having a few drinks here and there every day. I mean, drinking to excess for over 2 decades. And I mean without fail. I'm 100%er. I'm pretty high achiever, I think, and I missed 2 days in over a 20-year, like almost a 22-year period. And those 2 days, I mean, just for the record, I want you to know I was hospitalized, and so that's why.
Oh,
So, um, uh, and I thought I was getting by. I thought everything was kind of okay. I'm paying the bills, and it seemed like I'm kind of getting by in this world. And it seemed like sometimes I even thought I was having some amounts of progress. What I didn't really realize is that my life was disintegrating around me. What I mean by that is my ability to learn and progress was just shot because I just totally lived in this alcoholic haze. I was also unaware that how much other people knew about what was happening inside of me. They could see it, but I really couldn't. My relationships with my children were poor or non-existent and disintegrating and deteriorating, getting worse as time went on. And this was a progression. I continued to drink a little bit more over the period of time and years on a daily basis. Of course, my marriage is totally, not able to be present, not able to participate really in the marriage when you're checked out like that much so often. And so not good, ended up in, a tragic divorce and end of the relationship. All these things happened, and they say that you have to, a lot of times you hear about this rock bottom business,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I guess I hit whatever you would consider. I don't know if I did or not, but I got to a point where, some things happened that caused me to think about it. Really between horses and God. I had an experience with a horse, and I'm going to tell you this quick story, and
And
then
where was it at?
where was it at?
Yeah, and was it part of like a treatment program, or was it part of your work, or what were you doing during this time you were drinking and going through the divorce? Kind of what was your career like, and what were you doing, and did that have a play in this horse experience?
Yeah, it did. I always wanted to be a cowboy. As a matter of fact, I'm named after Shane. My mom named me after a movie that came out in the 60s called Shane,
Uh-huh.
a Western movie. And I grew up and I wanted to be a cowboy and do all the cool things that cowboys do. And so I've been in the horse industry as a living. I shoe horses, and I have a horse feed company, and I've done a lot of things in the horse business. I've ride and train horses, and so this was a result on, I was riding a horse one day in the progress of my work, and in a training, riding a younger horse, and here in my property, just inside in our riding pen, and I was just kind of going around, and boom, I was on the ground. I was on the ground, trying to catch my breath, gasping for my breath. And I got my breath back, and I was pretty sore, and I kind of tilted my head a little bit, laying there in the dust and the sand and the hot. It was hot. I remember that. It was hotter than hell. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh yeah,
So
it is hot. I live in
that's,
Texas and it's pretty hot here too.
yeah, that sand was hot. I remember that. I looked over there and squinted in the sun, and I could see my horse, and he was just wandering around like, I don't know what the hell's the matter with you. And it didn't seem to be anything wrong with him, and he kind of stepping on the reins and just kind of moseying around with his own curiosity like nothing was wrong. And I looked at him and I said, laying there gasping, trying to get my air. I was mad, and I'm like, why did you do this to me? Now, I can't be sure that that horse spoke to me, but I did hear the words that you did it to yourself, Shane. And for a minute, I really thought it was the horse, and I'm not saying it's not, but I don't want to be, uh, I don't want to be admitted to for being loony either. But I did hear those, I heard those words, and that moment, believe it or not, just I ended up not breaking any bones. I was all bruised up and bruised a bunch of ribs and stuff, and so it wasn't a critical, big time injury. But at that moment, I thought it was a pretty big thing, and I really thought about that, and I began, the process of what I like to say is the actual change is not the big deal, but I began the thinking of the process of making the
Mm-hmm.
change at that point.
how did that change go? So, I mean, I know like my own things of like with alcohol, similar to you, just, I can't remember having my first drink. I just know it wasn't as taboo like with my parents, and I'm pretty sure I probably had it around them, but I never really drank and stuff in high school because I wanted to go in the military and I didn't want any DUIs or anything. But, I went through a 20-year period of on and off drinking, and maybe I'd have a couple of years of sobriety or something. But, my problem was it never took over me physiologically, like where I had DTs or anything if I stopped and my body needed it. But my problem was if I did it, I wanted to do it every day. And it kind of became this norm of, you get off work, maybe you pour you a double shot and you sit in front of the TV and you wind down. And, I think one of the biggest issues probably we have, and um, as a society and a world, is just the normalization of it. Did your father drink or anything like that? Did you grow up seeing that kind of behavior in the home, like come home after work or off the ranch or something, and you grab a beer, kind of that's what cowboys do? Did that have any influence in all that?
Yeah, that's a good question. My upbringing was a little bit different than that. It was pretty taboo. It was it was pretty well forbidden. And, I was just totally rebelling in my drinking. My dad
Mm-hmm.
did not. But cowboys did. And so I did too. And I felt better when I did drink. So I continued to do what felt better in the moment and until it kind of, like what you're saying, you normalize it, or our society normalizes it, and we accept that normalization. And a lot of times, like, it's very easy to get to a place to where we're over drinking to one degree or another, I think, um, for sure. And then where we're at, then turning back sometimes can be the challenge.
Yeah. So how did you end up getting kicking the habit? Did you have to do rehab? Did you do anything like that? Or you started thinking about it, and was there some prayer, some journaling? What how did you get clean and sober?
And it's a good question. I appreciate that, Richard. The actual decision on a daily basis to pick up one of these, a Coke, or to
Mm-hmm.
pick up uh alcohol, it's pretty simple. It's like you either pick one up or the other. But the difficult part, as we know, is the choice that we make. And I was fortunate in that, my meditation, my prayer, and I mean, I thought about this for a long time. I thought about all the stories I hear about rehab, relapses. How am I going to go about doing this? Do I really want to make this change? Because at this point, I was in the morning, I was shaky. I was worried about having seizures if I
Mm-hmm.
quit. Um, Uh, and so I was physically, my body was physically addicted to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so was the rest of my lifestyle, my people that I deal with, and my whole routine of how I went about living. So in prayer and thought, I thought about this for like 8 months,
Mm-hmm.
on a daily basis. I'd think about it a little bit, and it involved a lot of prayer. And when it came down to it, I just set a date. And the thing about it is I didn't know. Okay. I didn't know if I could do this thing. What I knew is that I was going to give it a shot, and I was going to really commit to going for it. I had a little bit of what I knew was that I could really give it a shot, and I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I could get it done, but I knew that I could give it one hell of a shot, and I was committed to it, and I was resolved that I wanted to do this. And this thought and prayer for all these months is what really prepped me for it. I got on a Sunday morning. Let me tell you this. I came back from a horseshoe clinic on Saturday in California. Me and my brother came back, and he drove and I drank all the way. We got back at about 11:30 at night, and I had drank and drank and drank probably, I don't know, 24, 26 beers over the last few hours. A lot, kind of just like any other day. I woke up the next Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. I got in my oldest truck and I drove to a detox place and I checked myself in. And that was a humbling experience, is what I'll call it. They took all my personal belongings and my phone, and I really wasn't used to living like that. I was kind of used to being the boss and in charge. And so uh, that didn't really, I had to, kind of submit and humble myself and just kind of be there. And I did. And I gave them all that stuff. And I went in there because I knew I didn't want to die from a convulsion over this thing. And I knew that I was going to die of alcoholism at a young age. I really talked myself into believing that because I did believe it. And I believe it would have been true still. And so I checked myself in there. I was there for 3 days and 2 nights. I checked myself out of there. And each day I did my best and I never looked back. And that was in the second weekend of January of 2016.
Oh, wow. Man. So you got through kind of the detox phase and then just kind of kept going. Did you do any groups, any meetings, anything like that?
Yeah, I did. Actually, I participated in Alcoholics Anonymous for a little while, and went and got my chips. And I believe in Alcoholics Anonymous and the things that they represent and the 12 steps and the whole
Hmm.
deal. I I in the end, and I believe in going to get chips because the people that are coming for the first time, it gives hope. And so that's one big thing that I believe about that. And I still would go and get a chip. I haven't been 100% on my attendance because I've kind of let it slack off. But I do believe in those chips, particularly for hope for new people for a certain period of time. But they give the support. I have one little thing where I detour from the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is that I understand why they say that you are an alcoholic for life. In other words, my name's Shane, I'm an alcoholic, but I've changed the way that I believe about myself, that I was an alcoholic and I'm not an alcoholic. And so eh, you
Yeah,
know I
I'm similar in that, um, you know, this is probably my second or third time. Um, I hit a year of no alcohol in June, but it's I don't identify with it as much. I don't keep it as an identity, um, if that makes sense, because I don't want to, that's an old version of me. Um, and I just don't identify with it, and I don't want to identify with it. I don't want it holding up space in my life where something like being a podcaster could hold space instead, something more positive as opposed to this negative. But, kind of given that and those principles, and like with AA or anything, I think regardless, the point is find support and find connection because it's easier, like they say, um, if you want to go fast, go at it alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think, there's just something very empowering, whether it's listening to an episode like this and hearing other people's struggles, or a support group, whether it be AA or NA or whatever it is you use. But I think that connection, those stories, that peer support is probably one of the most important things you can do, um, to help yourself get sober from whatever it is. It could be shopping, porn, alcohol. For you and I, it just happened to be alcohol and kind of a way of life and a normalcy of it, um, the way it's portrayed.
That's right. I agree with you 100% about your perspective there. And just on the first part that you said, also where we began with this, is that the way that you prefer to identify yourself, and and you would look at that as your past self, and
Right.
that's a big thing. I think that's really a big thing. It's a big thing for me. I look at my past self and I want to know, I appreciate my past self. I have some compassion and some love for my past self because I can see what I was going through and I can see what I did to be able to make the progress to get the results I was looking for. But that version of myself that's what I was then, and
Yeah.
today and in the future, um, I think that's what's important to look at, is what we want to become, what we are now, and what we want to become in the future.
So when you started getting sober, you start doing all these things, and that kind of brings us to kind of what your specialty is and your space is about. And how did you come up with the idea, start it, what is it? But essentially, you kind of use your experience with horses to help people, whether it's fear and confidence. And is this something that you decided, looking back at that little boy, the alcohol gave you the confidence. And so as an adult, when you strip that old identity away and you're at ground zero, like myself, you have to build back that self-worth. You have to build back that self-confidence. You have to do small things to give you small wins to show yourself that you can do it. It's almost like being a baby again in a way. So, what made you think of this, and how did it get you? How did it assist you in building back confidence, and how and why did you decide to use this method and kind of go into this area of expertise or arena and decide to help people?
Interesting, your words you use there. You kind of have to be like a baby again, and there's a lot of truth in that, boy. If you, for me, because
Yeah,
the extent of my addiction, I had lost so much traction of my ability to progress in this life. I was just like stuck somewhere way back as a, I don't know, just not developed mentally, emotionally, and all these things, because I had been, finding my relief from my own mind in alcohol, you
yeah,
know.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's why I still feel probably maybe in my 30s in my brain, even though I'm 48, is because I stunted all those years, using alcohol.
One thing I've come to believe is a matter, it's one of my core beliefs, and that is, Richard, and that is that our beliefs about ourselves are the most important thing that we can work on in this world. I firmly believe that. I interviewed a lady, can see her face, it'll come to me, but she said that all negative human behavior can be traced to the root to a negative self-concept of yourself. And I thought about that. That's a big statement. That's a strong, bold statement. I thought about that. And I tried to prove it wrong, and I haven't been able to do that. I had to prove it wrong. I believe that that is true. Brooke Castillo is the owner of the Life Coach School, which is the longest standing. She's been a life coach for 20 years. It's the most successful life coach school. She's talked to people and coached people for over 20 years, and she says that every soul that she has coached, what the core issue comes down to their own personal worthiness. I believe that this idea that we have a lot of times in society, we think about okay, I'm going to wrap up our self-confidence, our self-esteem, our self-confidence, all of this into, we'll call it self-confidence, or your beliefs about yourself. Okay. So I'm just calling it all one big relationship with yourself. That a lot of times we look at it and we're like, oh yeah, I have self-confidence. I remember I got that. I've had confidence since I was a kid. That's something that we do as a young person. We just have it, and then we kind of got that done and we move on. Okay. And a lot of us have that view. It's a common view in society. And I believe that that view is harming us. I believe that, and that we can come to know that this relationship with ourself, first of, is of prime importance to ourselves and the people around us in this world, of critical importance, number one, and number two, that it is a lifelong pursuit. It's not something that you obtain and you got it done. Because
Yeah,
here's what happens. I mean, we feel like we're doing pretty good, and either we do something or something happens to us that takes a chip away at how we feel about ourselves. And then we have to decide what to do with this. And unless we are intentionally, purposefully working on a relationship with ourselves, we are not going to be able to live to our potential. And I don't even think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to commit to a pursuit of a loving relationship with yourself. I think it is our duty and responsibility, because without that, Okay. We just flat don't have the capacity to be able to give to the extent that we could to the people that we love and make our contribution to the world. That's how serious I am about this. I believe it to my core. And so I'm going to come back to your question. All of us, if you can go with me on this, take a real hard look at the way that you believe about yourself. And if you can think that maybe it's a good idea to improve that belief that you have about yourself, and maybe even get to where you could commit to pursuing this, there are steps that you can do. It's pretty simple, and they affect everything in your world. Because the thing of it is we've all done stuff. And we've all had stuff happen to us. A lot of us have had stuff happen to us, traumatic stuff, some of us, right? And we've all done stuff too, all of us, okay? I mean, you've done stuff. Let me tell you, I could tell you stuff, the whole camera would turn red in everybody's faces. You know what I'm saying? I've done some stuff, okay?
Yeah.
And we've all have this shame a little bit. We
Hmm.
all as human beings get to experience shame, and shame, makes us hide and going away, and it chips away if we don't learn shame resilience and how to process it. It chips away at how we believe about ourselves. This impacts everything that we do. So my really message is that, and what I do is help people learn those steps so that they improve their lives in all aspects, starting with teens. We have a new initiative that now we are beginning with teenagers and their parents. But this is one of the core principles of our stable living program, is belief, our faith in ourself. The last thing I want to say about this right now is that, as I want to come back to that, we've all done some things, okay? Because somewhere rattling around back there might be some things that you've done that you kind of wish you probably wouldn't have done, okay? And the thing about it is it doesn't matter what it is, okay? It does not matter what you have done. As a matter of fact, it doesn't matter what something or someone has done to you, which is a kind of a hard thing, because some of those things are very sensitive and they're difficult. Those are challenges in life. But whatever they are, it doesn't affect your worth as a human being. A lot of times we have a hard time differentiating between what we've done and who we are. And one of my messages is to you today is that it doesn't matter what you've done. And it doesn't even matter what has been done to you. You are a priceless, invaluable soul, and of immeasurable value, no less and no more than me or anyone else. And if we can come to know that, which is not just a little old thing, developing core beliefs is something, like I said, that I believe is a result of a commitment over time, over a lifetime. The results of this, okay, are just tremendous. And it doesn't take very long to start seeing tremendous results.
Wow. I love the term of what you said, shame resilience. Um, because I think especially men, and especially if you've had any substance misuse disorders, um, you isolate, and it's that shame that causes you to isolate. And kind of like you said, it chips at that self-worth because you don't feel worthy. That was kind of one of the thoughts. And the second secondary thoughts were, um, you know, we were talking about, you were saying as kids, I can remember going like, if somebody asks you, are you confident? Well, with certain things, kind of things we excel at. Maybe I was good in school. I was good at martial arts, but I was a short little guy. I wasn't very confident with girls, you know? And I think it's one of those things that you kind of get better at, or something shows you a result, and that's kind of where you gain that confidence, hence the importance of trying new things. But one of the things I kind of thought about was ensuring that, I thought, why aren't we teaching some of this framework starting, I don't know, whether it's fourth or fifth grade, junior high. So children know the importance of trying new things that are difficult. Children understand that, um, hey, maybe I'm not the best at math right away, but I can get better at it. And by practicing, that's going to give me confidence. Um, but yeah, so with shame resilience, what is something you do to kind of redirect or justify that shame? Is it kind of a relationship with God and prayer and stuff of going like, hey, I'm that's something I did. It's not who I am. That's not my true heart. And you know, I don't say, yes, I've done some bad things. It doesn't make me a bad person. How do you deal with that and develop that shame resilience? And how did you kind of come on to that?
Couple of things you said are huge, and that is, and I agree with you 100% that, uh, if we can get the message, if we can understand it and get the message to children, to younger adults, they're gonna have a better life. Which,
Mhm.
you know what, that doesn't mean we can start right now today too, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I totally agree with that. And so one thing I wanted to say about this confidence that you mentioned before, and I'll come right back to shame, is briefly that I differentiate confidence in two ways. Confidence in a thing. Okay, confidence in a thing is based on our past. So that means, let's just say that I've been riding horses
Hmm.
for 30 years, and I'm pretty confident in my horsemanship skills, and I can show up and and I can feel pretty good about that. And I have confidence in riding in loping a circle to on the left lead. Okay. So I have confidence in that. And that's based on my past because I've been doing it a lot. Okay.
Right.
Self-confidence is based on the future. And those are things where we don't have the past to base our thoughts on. So where this has to come from is our internal feelings about ourself, right? So when I get up to public speak for the first time, or let's just say in my example, if I were to get on a horse for the first time and take my first lesson, this is not, I haven't done this before if I haven't ridden before, right? So
Right.
the ability to move forward is going to be based on my belief about myself, my self-confidence, not my confidence in the thing that I have done in the past. That's easy. And so is we exercise our self-confidence and we exercise courage. And courage has a really, we all want to be courageous. It has a positive, it sounds positive, but it's hard, really,
Hmm.
because positive is dealing with fear. But if we believe in ourselves, in other words, if I am confident in myself, in that it's okay if I fail, it's okay if I fall, it's okay if I get up there and look like an idiot in front of these people, because it doesn't affect my value. If I believe that, then I can start exercising my courage. And then pretty soon I gain capacity. And then I have some history to look back on. And I have this confidence in a thing, and it becomes pretty easy. So just wanted to mention that about
Yeah,
call.
that's a good analogy in terms of um but yeah, I can see that self-worth of looking at something in the future because I was sitting there as you were discussing it trying to figure out kind of where that line is of going what is based on my past abilities, and it's interesting of, I don't know.
Let me say this about that, because we can look to the past to help us create beliefs about ourselves, right? But we don't want to be totally dependent on that, or we're stuck where we're at.
Yeah.
Now, if you tell me, Richard, if you tell me, hey, Shane, you are a total badass, you are great, okay? I can appreciate that and I can accept it and I can use it as part of my belief, okay? But I don't want to depend on you.
Right.
I can accept that, but if I don't, what I need to do is learn how to generate. That's just a bonus, okay? I want to look at as opinions and thoughts of others as a bonus. If I can either accept it or reject it, and if it's positive, I want to accept it and I will use that, but I won't want to be dependent on your thoughts. I need to learn how to When I talk about self-confidence, I'm talking about generating our own thoughts that lead to our own beliefs about ourselves so that we're not dependent on our past and we're not dependent on others. We can actually create these beliefs internally ourselves. That gives us the control, and that gives us the ability to get the results we want moving forward.
Hey, after you're done listening to this amazing podcast, be sure to give it a 5-star rating, then go check out the other podcasts in the Podcast Connection Network, including my own, Everything's Connected. Check us all out. The link will be in the episode's description.
Now going back, how do you develop shame resilience?
Okay. Yeah. I went way out of whack there. Let me come back.
No, they're all connected, kind of. So for sure.
We know that, and we've said that everybody gets to experience shame. It's just part of the human experience. And so what it is that we do things and we think as a result of what we have done, or a lot of times what others have done to us. In the case of trauma, for example, abuse and so on, we think because somebody did something to us or because of what we have done, that something is wrong with us internally, that we are less than, that we have low worth as a result of this. And so that is what we call shame. Shame means that something is wrong with us. We don't measure up, we have low worth. And so what this emotion of shame does is it makes us want to hide and lie, right? It makes us want to hide and lie. Those are the most common things that we do. You described that you didn't want to talk to other people. And as we isolate, that's the word you used, as we isolate, and I was a professional isolator also when I was drinking, right? I don't want to tell everybody all this stuff. I mean, how can I say what's wrong with me? I already feel like something's wrong with me. And men, yes, men are, a lot of times if we don't learn shame resilience, I mean, just it's the depression and suicide with men, and it can be absolutely tragic, And so the key is to the beginning of this, and Brene Brown is the expert in shame, and I learned what I know about shame from her. But the key is to we have to we have to be willing to own our story. We have to be able to own our story. We have to be able to say it, and it has to be okay of what we have done. Now, that doesn't mean that I show up and say, "Hey, Richard, I'm Shane, and here's my deepest, darkest secret."
Right.
That'd be kind of weird, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about with people who have earned our trust. So I have a couple of people in my life, not a lot, just less than a handful, that whatever that I can fully trust with everything inside of my heart and my soul. Okay. And so if I'm experiencing shame, the first thing that I want to do is come out of hiding. Okay. And then if I can share this with somebody who's earned my trust, that's the beginning, because I'll create a connection. Hopefully they'll kind of normalize it with me. And then that is the beginning of getting through the shame. First is own our story. Okay. Just have it be okay that we did it. And yes, and I also exercise prayer. And then the next step is going to be to share it with someone we trust, because we have to get out of hiding.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. And when you mentioned, I definitely think of the suicide epidemic we kind of have, and especially among veterans, and a lot of it, I feel like one of the root things could be shame. Shame for what you did, shame for what you didn't do. Maybe you should have taken an action when you didn't. And guilt, survivor's guilt, is probably a form of shame. Um, but yeah, I definitely see that. But as I was thinking about that, if you were my confidant and I came to you and I was ashamed of something I did, when you mentioned normalize it, and how would you, let's say, if I were coming to you, how would you help me normalize it, but also not let me off the hook for it so I can move forward?
some of those things need to be let off the hook. So I think what you're thinking about is something that, because I think what you're saying is something that we don't want to repeat, right?
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So,
there's some just like a slip up of going like, hey, if I'm a bodybuilder and I had a cheat meal and I'm ashamed of it, then you could say, hey, everybody, the goal is progress, not perfection. Like you said, I think there's times of um one's an accountability kind of more of a factor, and some things you don't need to let off the hook, and some things you do. But how do you coach that?
with our men and women in uniform, it's just, I've seen a lot of healing happen just by putting your arm around these guys, and it's just like, hey man, you're in war. You're in
Yeah.
war. People are dying. I mean, it doesn't get any much more of a high stress environment here. You can't expect yourself to behave in a perfect situation with all this going around you. It's just that what your response of what you did or did not do, it's okay. It's okay and you're okay. Yeah, if this, then that, and maybe this, and then maybe you should have done this and whatever, but you cannot expect yourself, particularly in this situation, to be able to behave in a way where there's not going to be any errors with all this. With it's just too much to be able to handle as a human being. And you know what? You did the best you could with what you had to work with at the time, and I love you, man. And that's how I would normalize, the beginning of that. And if we can help people with that, if we can encourage each other, to, I mean, listen, I was born in 1968. My dad didn't say he loved me until I was like 30 something. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
My dad is a tough dude, and I wanted to be, men are tough, and we don't really need to talk about nothing other than being tough. And the tougher the better, and any sign of weakness is a sign of weakness, period. So I mean, we got to move away from a little bit of this idea. And I think the belief that I've been working on is
Hmm.
having the ability and the courage to share what's going on inside of me is what really takes some courage. Now that's toughness. Okay. And if I can take care of me to the point to where I can take care of somebody else, now I've done something. Okay. That is mental toughness. That's being a man,
Mm.
not isolating, can't talk about it, it's too weak. It is not weakness. Being
Yeah,
vulnerability is strength, and we need to give it, and we need to guard other people's. That is my big message for you in this today.
I think it's interesting. It was in preparation for this interview and then also an interview I had with someone else, but I can't remember where I was. And I was just sitting there thinking, you're talking about some of this imprint that we're left on that shapes our beliefs and our views and normalizes, let's say, alcohol and men being tough. I was like, man, Hollywood has not done us any favors. But with the movies they make, the storylines, I think that's important for us to remember, like, that's entertainment. Hollywood is entertainment. Movies are entertainment. This is a story that's being told for your entertainment. These are actors reading lines. This is not necessarily real life. And to be careful with, you know, and before we started talking about this, and I think the pandemic really opened up this kind of mental health space and for us to talk about it, you know, we just let all this stuff through the gates and let it shape our mind and imprint on us and shape our beliefs. Because we had no idea. And if anyone had an idea, they weren't necessarily telling us, but it's kind of been with the rise of social media and the impacts of that and scrolling. And now you can link it back to the first forms of kind of social media, which is television and entertainment and what they normalize is okay. But let's circle back to you started your program to start helping people. How did you get into that and what made you want to do it and what's it called and what do you do? How'd you come up with it?
Yeah. I as I've changed, and I started this company, the Horsemanship Journey, in evaluating my life and the difference from a dark and shameful and just a unhappy, not very progressive place, and to a whole different level of living that it's much more peaceful. It's more, I feel like I'm more in control. I feel like I have control of myself, and I've been empowered. And that doesn't mean that everything's hunky damn dory every day, but it's compared to what I've been, this is like a whole new place in life. And and as I see people and I look back, I look at the keys, and I really took a look, I call it between God and horses helped me make change my life into a better place. And so I looked at the lessons that I had learned from horses, how they behave with each other and the relationships that we have with horses. And I drew the parallels that that we have in human relationships with each other and with ourselves. And there was just so many of them that it made total sense to try to share this with the world for people that that seek change. And so between God and horses, and and also people, I've studied the personal improvement for a number of years, and so I have a lot of credit for all the people that I've studied also in this space. But that's where we come to. And so yeah, so now we do have a program called the Horsemanship Journey, has a program called Stable Living, kind of a play on words
Mhm.
there, where it's just coaching, online coaching and support for teens and parents who are, like if you suspect there's a problem, sometimes even just to be proactive to try to keep our kids out of negative behavior. And a lot of times, just let me say this, for parents, excuse me, for parents, when our kids start down a road that we don't want them to go on, guess what happens? Shame and guilt. It's like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, my kids are doing this. I can't talk about it. To my friends, what did I do wrong? It's all my fault. I should have done this. And so guess what happens? Parents hide, then they don't support their kids in this time where they really need them. And so our stable living is uh, it's not combined, but we do teens and parents separately. They go through because it's a difficult time, and that's what our focus is right now, is on teens and parents.
What made you, I I'm trying to figure out, you may be the first person that I've talked to, or second, that has included younger people like the teens. Where did that idea come from? And was it scary kind of launching this journey?
Yeah, all new things are kind of scary. There's an element of fear to make the decision and proceed. But the the transition to adulthood, from basically a child to adulthood, I mean, is a big deal.
Hmm.
um, it's a big process. And then becoming autonomous to where we're fully responsible, understanding even what responsibility is, personal responsibility. And then this transition, it's a major change, man. And it's very difficult. And there's a lot of times what happens in a lot of times what we see in the transition is that same things that I did. In order to feel good, kids do behaviors that don't serve them. And there's teen depression is super high, teen suicide is super high, and addiction and teen pregnancy. And and those are just a few of the ways that it's not just drugs and alcohol. It can be porn, it can be gambling. All these things can be developed, and there is a result of our internal, I really believe that our internal feelings about ourselves is what is at the core of this. And so if we can actually learn, like you were talking about earlier, about learn how to manage the thoughts that are in our minds, the sooner the better. Now, teens can't pick up everything because they don't have the experience, and they're developed to a certain, I mean, we're all in a hurry to grow up fast, man. When I was
Right.
14, I wanted to be 21, and I wanted to be fully independent. We're all in a hurry to grow up, but we're not quite there yet. But even so, there's a lot that we can take in if somebody will take us under their wing and be able to show us these things. If you and I and just about everybody that, like, man, I wish I would have known that when I was a kid, that's what we're working on.
You know what's interesting? When you were talking, I was actively thinking it, and then you said this whole thing of like we can't wait to grow up. And I don't know about other cultures because I can only speak to ours and how I grew up, but this concept of, are we setting kids up for failure because whether it's like, let's say alcohol, you got to be 21, we we restrict it or make it prohibited to an age, and so it makes it seem forbidden until you're that age. And so people want to do it. They want to grow up because they want to be that age so they can do adult things, or they do it because they're not supposed to do it because they're not of age. And I don't know how much, if that changed, would it change how people approach that in the first place? If you lived in an area where your parents gave you wine at 14 and it wasn't a big deal and there wasn't necessarily a drinking age, would kids still have that desire to seek it out of a, you know, I want to be grown up, or I want to do what's forbidden to me? I kind of wonder about that.
It's an interesting question. We do want what we can't have a lot of times. So
Yeah. So with the stable living, you do some online coaching now. Do you bring people to where you live since you have horses and do stuff like that? Do you do any workshops, weekend type stuff where you actually get people in tune with horses? And um and also I was wondering, like, kind of the principles, do you use some of those similarities in communication of how you see horses and humans behaving within the stable program?
yeah, we do. Our program is not is online. I give some riding lessons to people, but our stable living is an online program, not a horse therapy type program.
Hmm.
We do use principles that are learned from horses in communication, in, believe it or not, forgiveness, even forgiveness when it comes to
Hmm.
ourselves, because in listening, because horses are just tremendous examples of 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 solid principles that we can look at and they make total sense, and it's kind of makes it easy to apply the lessons when we see how horses go about it. Most of our the people that we have are farm and ranch kids and rural kids, and so they've seen a little bit of horses, and we have a little bit of demonstrations, but not horse therapy. It is our stable living is online for teens and parents.
Now, do you have any plans to potentially move it from strictly an online platform to, like a weekend workshop and include some riding of the horses?
Yeah, we've talked about some demonstrations, and so I don't know, we got a lot of things in the works. We'll see what happens over the
A lot of
next.
irons in the fire.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, I think, even like with podcasting, is there's so much, and one thing takes up a lot of time and you finally click to get that better and resolved, and then the next thing's going to take up, whether it's the production piece or a business piece. So it's interesting kind of how they go back and forth.
for
But
sure.
um what embarking on this journey and being allowed to, getting the opportunity to use what you've learned and help others, um, whether it's conquering fears, gaining self-confidence, and or just understanding some of these principles. What's one thing that's kind of happened that you never would have expected that's been like a blessing in this journey?
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that question. The there's been quite a few things, as a result. I never used to be able to could say this, but I like myself today. I'm a pretty cool dude. I'm pretty happy with me. I'm not a perfect soul, and being, but one of the biggest results, I didn't realize this when I started drinking, stopped when I began the idea that I'm going to quit drinking. And then I found out that I needed to work on changing how I felt about myself, but I had no idea how it was going to impact the relationships around me. And that has been the biggest key because, you know, they say that we're hardwired for connection, and a lot of people really have a belief, and that they say that developing the loving relationships in our lives is really what's most important. And I think that for a lot of us, that is the most important. And the key people in my life, my immediate family, my
Hmm.
children, my wife. Um, the thing of it is that the result that I didn't know was going to happen was the reason that they're better is because I learned how to take care of me. I had no idea how much influence the way that I felt about me was going to impact the relationship that I had with the people I love. It's incredible. I mean, I don't think that we go about on our daily basis as we go throughout life really knowing inside, I mean, really taking it in, how much power and control, well, I wouldn't say that, but how much, because we can't control other people, but how much effect that we have on the quality of our relationships simply by the way that we believe about ourselves. And that's been an incredible thing to witness and to work on. And I continue to work on that every day.
I always say one of those things that I've noticed, and I've mentioned this before, is I'm kind of like the thermostat for the family. If I'm not adjusted correctly, then everybody else is kind of out of whack. But if I come correct and adjusted, then they're okay. And even if they get off a little bit, it's easier for me to bring back a stable temperature. Um, if I'm cool and I'm where I need to be mentally and spiritually. And so
I
I've
should
definitely found that interesting.
I should have recognized it, because I don't know why it's such a surprise, because it's the truth with horses. I mean, you walk into the barn, there ain't no secrets. Those horses know what the hell's going on. And the minute that you come into proximity with them and you start to work with them, you're not keeping it in. They know what's inside your heart and soul, and you see it. I mean, they're reacting to everything, whether it's said or not. And so, yeah, it's the
So
same with
they
us.
they can understand fear. They feel fear.
Oh,
I was
absolutely.
bucked off a horse at 9 years old, or actually we rode him in the morning, we put him in the pen, let him eat, and then went back for an afternoon ride. And the mare I was on started acting wonky. And I was a little person, very little. And when I pulled the reins, they broke, and my arm wasn't long enough. My uncle, who was a avid horse rider, is like, just reach down and grab the bit. And I couldn't. And then the mare took off and just started going through the woods and the pastures. And eventually, like, he pulled up beside me. I was just holding on to the saddle horn. And he's like, jump over to me. And I'm like 9 years old. I'm like, hey, I don't think I'm the Lone Ranger. I don't think I can go from horse to horse. And he's like, I'll find a space and you just bail out like in the clearance of a field. But I have not been on a horse since, and I am terrified of horses. Not like going up and, let's say, petting one, but I have this innate reservation of riding one. And, you know, therefore I don't spend a lot of time. But are they able to sense that? My
Oh
fear.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yep. You
It's-
have to work on your thoughts before next time you get on, so you have a better experience. But yeah, I can imagine why. I mean, that sounds pretty rough there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of one of those things that I almost want to uh next time I see a horse, I want to clear my mind and not look at it from that experience, and look at it from this animal. And especially after talking to you and learning about kind of the intuitiveness of it, and kind of just uh pet a horse nicely, just visit with it and be loving, as opposed to always having that fear, that thought in the back of my head of like, I'll never get on you because one bucked me off when I was 9 years old, you know?
Yeah, that sounds
I'll,
like a good place to start.
yeah. Where can people find you?
we're all over media, and you can just begin at thehorsemanshipjourney.com.
Awesome. Well, I give every guest the opportunity. If you have any questions for me, you can ask me anything you want.
Yeah, I appreciate that. This is a short time knowing you. Do you want to, for if there's anybody who listens to your show that hasn't had a quick summary of your story? I've heard little bits and pieces of it, but I want to know if you want to take the time to just to give a quick summary.
Sure, yeah. So, I come from a healthcare background. I was also in the military. So I would say, and I cooked for a long time. So service has kind of always been my thing. I'm a server. I feel more comfortable giving. And I would say when you're that kind of person, it's not necessarily what you do, it's who you are. And, being in healthcare for 12 years, being a leader, when the pandemic hit, I got laid off 9 months into the pandemic, and it really crushed my identity. Really, because that's what I identified with as who I was. And I hadn't been a great drinker before that, but during that time, I basically just coped poorly and yeah, ended up drinking way too much and wasn't the husband I wanted to be, wasn't the son I wanted to be, wasn't the father I wanted to be. Everything felt poorly. And July 2022 was probably my rock bottom. And I still kind of mulled around for a good year, 11 months of not quite giving it up. I would say probably like year 8 months of knowing. And then somewhere in there, whether it was through, I'd listened to some podcasts about sobriety, different things, and I learned with this one, the way he explained it about what it does to your brain just clicked for me, however that was, at the right time. And I said, on my birthday last year, I said, I'm giving it up. I had 2 margaritas at Chili's for my birthday, and the depression started setting in, and I was like, it's just not worth it. Like, either you're going to go all the way and get drunk and black out. But if you didn't even catch a buzz or you got a slight buzz and then you're already feeling like a downward part of it wearing off, like it's just not great. And I said, okay, I need some sort of stability in my brain. And I gave it up and didn't look back. Probably about a month later, 5 weeks later, I started a podcast. It was kind of something I'd been mulling around. And through the process, I've kind of treated it as my journal in a way. And as I've gotten through, of course, it's been hard to say some of the things, but I continuously get more comfortable. And I think that's part of why I don't identify my as much with that piece of myself. But, working everything out in my head, I had realized that, look, I mean, it was a business decision. It was pandemic and a lot of things were messed up. And I had to go, what did they give me? And I had to look and start being thankful for all the opportunities to learn to run a business, the opportunities to help people, all the interviews I conducted, and starting being able to tie those back and go, like, man, they gave me so much that is even relational to podcasting, being able to interview. And and it was kind of going through that thing. I think what you had touched on, understanding that, okay, who I am, I'm still that caring person. That's my identity, kind, caring, and compassionate. But I'm still the same person. I still have the same core beliefs. My heart's still the same. I still desire to help people get better, improve themselves, whatever it is. But I can have so much more reach over streaming and podcasting than I ever could at the 2 little clinics I managed. They weren't necessarily little, but you know, in talking about geography and what you're doing every day and touching people and potentially helping them. And so, yeah, that's kind of been where I'm at. And now I'm over 50 episodes published and, keep going. I'll hit a year. I hit a year of no alcohol in June. This month, near the end of the month, I'll be hitting a year of the podcast with over 50 episodes. And the only thing I think about now is I go, I have to think about it the same way of my identity and what I want to do and what my goal is here and how I identify with it and attach myself. Because I go, okay, just like that job, podcasting could go away. And how would that make me feel? And how would I deal with that as compared to how I dealt with the layoff and that I kind of identity crisis type of thing. Um, so yeah, it's given me an opportunity to think a lot, but I'm still in that transformational phase. And like I said, it's been a little over a year, but all I want to do is help people through whether it's my stories, the sharing of other people's stories. It's also a way to kind of preserve history. You have children, and this is a way to hear their dad's story and to be able, once we're all long gone, whether it's grandchildren, whatever, we're of a different generation. We may have pictures of our great grandparents, but we couldn't hear any stories or anything. And this is a way to kind of preserve some of that and to be able to look and go, because I was thinking about that when you were talking, I was like, you know, your family was able to see where you were and now where you are, and it even caused a divorce. But, it's like, what do your kids think of you now and seeing this transformation and how are they now? And being able to hear that. And like I said, when we're long gone, these are those reminders. I always think, I worked at level 1 trauma for 6 years in an emergency room. Things happen very quickly. Life can change, not just for you and your whole family. It impacts everyone you have contact with should something devastating happen, up to and including death. And I know that I could be gone tomorrow. And that's what keeps me honest and keeps me open to share, because when I feel embarrassed or I feel that shame or surrounding my story or circumstances of things I've done, I say, yes, if I'm gone tomorrow, I want these lessons and these words preserved for my kids so they can hear raw truth and hopefully have a better life than I did by not making the mistakes that I did. Because I don't know if growing up, I don't think my parents there weren't a lot of shared stories. There weren't a lot of talking about mistakes and talking about failures or talking about shame or things that they dealt with. And so I think being able to open that and have it in a place where our kids can understand it, even if we're not here to talk to them. Because sometimes, too, it's almost like sometimes a conversation is harder to have in person with your child. But if, my daughter were to listen to an episode when I didn't know and she gets some of these lessons, she can understand me as well. But yeah, that's kind of it. Starting the podcast was a way to give me direction and journey and give me focus on something because I wasn't having any luck in the traditional, worldly corporate job hunt. And in all honesty, I didn't really want to go back to it anyway. So a podcast kind of became my outlet, my focus, and now it's been almost a year and I absolutely love it. I love the people I get to meet. I love the stories I get to hear. And I feel like it's mutually beneficial because, like I said, it's a way to preserve those stories for future generations and um, especially when we have family.
Yeah, well, you've had a good result of that layoff. It's had a positive impact to a lot of people, and just wanted to congratulate you on your upcoming anniversaries of your podcast and your sobriety. If that's what you want to keep going, I wish you all the best in that.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Yeah, I got goosebumps thinking about it. It's definitely the right choice. And, you know, it's been hard. There's been some tough times, but I think when you're in the right direction, when you're on the right path, the right doors open up. But it hadn't been without a lot of struggle, a lot of prayer, a lot of questioning, a lot of journaling, that self work. Unfortunately, many of us don't turn to it until we hit that rock bottom and we need to get sober because we have a problem or something. But I really think, like I said, I think this is something, I think self-improvement is something we should be teaching kids how to look within themselves and understand their emotions, because all the stuff they're learning in school, that's only one piece of life. Um, we can't wait for the elements in life to chew up people and spit them out to hit rock bottom, when we can start arming people with tools, so it doesn't get that bad.
Agreed.
Because that's how we make a better world, is, and, we're on the back half. So I'm 48. So it's all about, at a 21-year-old, a 20, and a 10-year-old, all girls. So it's about them and giving them the tools and their kids, to make it better. So this is the least of their worries. So they have a grip on this. So they know how to handle this when all the other stuff kind of surrounds them, because this is the most important part, that self-worth, self-love, self-esteem, self-confidence, and understanding. I'm trying to teach my 10-year-old how important self-talk is. Don't ever say I was stupid. No,
Yeah.
choose a different word. So
It matters.
it does. It does. Words matter. They're very powerful. But all right, man. I appreciate the conversation, and I'm gonna go hit the gym and do some more podcast work and spend time with my family. Those are the important things to me. So I'm gonna soak them up and try to enjoy them. And I hope you
Thanks
do
so
the
much.
same. All right,
Thanks
man.
so much.
I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Remember, go out and be the person that you want to meet.
Let's go.